It started like any other routine flight. The passengers were settled in, the engines hummed steadily, and the sky stretched wide and clear ahead. Captain James, a seasoned pilot with years of experience, was in control, guiding the plane smoothly through the air. Beside him, First Officer Ryan, a capable but less experienced co-pilot, kept a watchful eye on the instruments. Everything seemed perfect, until it wasn't. Out of nowhere, Captain James slumped forward, his hands slipping from the controls. His breathing was shallow, his face pale. At first, Ryan thought it was just fatigue, but then panic set in. This wasn't normal. The captain wasn't responding. The plane, though still on autopilot, needed immediate attention. Heart pounding, Ryan reached out, shaking James's shoulder. No reaction. A wave of fear washed over him. He had trained for emergencies, but nothing quite like this. Thousands of feet above the ground, hundreds of passengers relying on him, and his captain, his leader, was completely unresponsive. What was he supposed to do? Call for help? Take over the controls? Could he even land the plane by himself? With no time to waste, Ryan grabbed the radio, his voice unsteady as he called for assistance. But then, something unexpected happened. A sudden alert flashed on the dashboard. The plane was veering slightly off course. Was it the autopilot, or something worse? What happens next will keep you on the edge of your seat. Stay tuned as this flight takes an unpredictable turn you won't believe. Ryan's fingers trembled as he gripped the controls, his mind racing through every emergency procedure he had ever learned. The radio crackled, but his thoughts drowned out the noise. He glanced at Captain James again, still motionless. His breathing was faint, but at least he was alive. That was something, right? The flashing alert on the dashboard demanded his attention. He scanned the instruments, trying to make sense of what was happening. The autopilot was engaged, but something was wrong. The plane had started to drift slightly off course, not enough for the passengers to notice, yet, but enough to set off a warning. What had triggered it? A system failure? Or was it connected to whatever had happened to the captain? Ryan swallowed hard. He had flown this aircraft many times before, but always with James guiding him. Now, with thousands of feet of empty sky below him, he felt utterly alone. His training told him to stay calm, to assess the situation logically, but logic wasn't helping. Every second that passed felt like an eternity. He reached for the radio, his voice shaky as he called out, "Mayday, Mayday, this is Flight 209. The captain is unresponsive. I repeat, the captain is unresponsive, requesting immediate assistance." Static. Then a reply. "Flight 209, confirm the nature of the emergency. Do you require medical assistance or flight support?" Ryan hesitated. The truth was, he wasn't sure. And the worst part, they were still miles away from the nearest airport. Ryan's mind raced as he tried to form a response. Did he need medical assistance for the captain? Absolutely. But flight support? He wasn't even sure what that meant in a situation like this. He had trained for emergencies, but this was something else entirely. His hands felt clammy against the controls as he pressed the radio button again. "Tower, I need help. The plane is still on autopilot, but something isn't right. The captain is unconscious. I don't know what's causing it." His own voice sounded distant, like someone else was speaking for him. "Copy that, Flight 209. Stand by. We're assessing the situation." Assessing the situation. Ryan didn't have time for that. The plane was still drifting slightly off course, and he didn't know why. He had checked the controls, the instruments. Everything seemed normal. But then, why was that warning still flashing? And why had the captain collapsed in the first place? A sudden thought hit him like a jolt. What if it wasn't just the captain? He turned his head toward the cockpit door, his pulse quickening. Were the passengers okay? Was something happening in the cabin that he didn't know about? His hand hovered over the intercom switch, but before he could press it, a new sound filled the cockpit. A sharp beep, followed by another alert on the dashboard. This one was different. Fuel imbalance detected. Ryan's stomach dropped. This was no ordinary emergency. Something was seriously wrong with the plane. Ryan's breath hitched as he stared at the warning. Fuel imbalance. That wasn't something he could ignore. It meant one side of the plane was using more fuel than the other, a dangerous situation that could throw off their stability. But why was this happening now? Was it a system failure? Or something worse? His fingers hovered over the controls, trying to remember the proper procedure. He needed to transfer fuel between the tanks, but he had never done it alone before. He glanced at Captain James again, hoping for some kind of miracle, a sign of movement, even a groan. But nothing. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him like never before. Then, another thought hit him like a punch to the gut. If there was a fuel issue, how much longer could they stay in the air? Were they losing fuel faster than they realized? He needed answers, fast. "Tower, this is Flight 209, he said into the radio, his voice steadier now. "I have a fuel imbalance warning. Please advise." There was a brief silence, then the controller's voice returned, more urgent this time. "Flight 209, confirm your remaining fuel levels. We need to determine if you have a leak." A leak? Ryan's pulse pounded. If that were true, they might not have enough fuel to make it to their destination. And if the passengers found out, panic would spread like wildfire. Suddenly, a loud knock came from the cockpit door. Someone was outside. Ryan hesitated, his hand hovering over the latch. Then a voice, a frantic one. "Open up. Something is happening back here." His stomach twisted. Whatever was going on in the cabin, it wasn't good, and he was running out of time. Ryan's heart pounded as he reached for the latch. His instincts told him to be cautious, but time was slipping away. He cracked the door open just enough to see a flight attendant, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. "Something's wrong," she whispered urgently. "Passengers are feeling dizzy. Some have passed out." Ryan's blood ran cold. His mind scrambled for an explanation. The captain collapsing, the fuel imbalance, and now this? It couldn't be a coincidence. "Is it the air?" he asked, gripping the doorframe. I don't know," she stammered. "It started about 10 minutes ago. At first, people said they felt lightheaded, but now some aren't waking up." Ryan's throat tightened. If this was a cabin pressure issue, they were in serious trouble. He darted his eyes to the altitude gauge, still within normal range. The oxygen levels should be fine. But then why were people losing consciousness? His fingers flew to the oxygen mask panel above his seat, ready to deploy them if needed. But just as he reached for the switch, another alert blared across the cockpit. "Electrical system failure." Ryan froze. The instruments flickered for a second before stabilizing. The autopilot disengaged with a loud chime. The plane was still in the air, but for how much longer? Panic clawed at his chest. Whatever was happening wasn't just one malfunction, it was something bigger, something deliberate. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it, a blinking light on the control panel. The cargo hold door had been accessed mid-flight. Someone else was on this plane, and they weren't supposed to be. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. The cargo hold door had been accessed. His mind raced through the possibilities. This wasn't just a mechanical failure, it was sabotage. Someone on board had done this. But why? He had no time to figure that out now. The plane was still in the air, but with the fuel imbalance, electrical failure, and passengers falling unconscious, it wouldn't stay that way for long. He grabbed the radio. "Tower, this is Flight 209. We have a possible security breach. The cargo hold has been accessed mid-flight. Passengers are losing consciousness. I need immediate instructions." The controller's voice came back, sharp and urgent. "Flight 209, remain calm. Can you maintain control of the aircraft?" Ryan clenched his jaw. "For now, but I don't know for how long." Then, movement. Behind him, Captain James let out a weak groan. Ryan spun around. His eyes fluttered open, dazed and unfocused. "Captain." Ryan shook his shoulder. "Can you hear me?" James coughed, his voice hoarse. "Something's in the air." His words were barely audible, but they sent a chill down Ryan's spine. A sudden realization hit him. Whatever was affecting the passengers, it had started in the cockpit first. That meant it was spreading through the ventilation system. Someone had released something into the air. The plane jolted. A warning alarm blared. Fuel levels critical. Ryan had no choice. He had to land. Now. Fighting against the dizziness creeping into his own head, he switched the transponder to emergency mode and adjusted the controls for an emergency descent. The ground was still miles below, but he had to get the plane down before they lost too much fuel, or before he passed out too. Then, through the haze, Captain James forced out one more word. "Cargo." Ryan's eyes widened. The answer had been right in front of him the whole time. Whatever was causing this, it wasn't just in the air. It had come from the cargo hold. And whoever was behind it might still be down there. Ryan's vision blurred as he fought to stay conscious. The plane was descending fast, but he couldn't think about that now. The cargo hold. That was where it all started, if he could just hold on a little longer. Captain James coughed again, struggling to sit up. "We have to." He winced, his strength failing him. "Get the masks on. Keep flying." Ryan's hands moved instinctively, flipping the switch to release the passenger oxygen masks. He grabbed his own, inhaling deeply, the fresh air clearing some of the fog from his mind. But the bigger problem remained. What was in the cargo hold? And who put it there? Before he could process it, the radio crackled. "Flight 209, you're cleared for emergency landing. Nearest airport is 10 minutes out." 10 minutes. Could they hold on that long? The plane shuddered as Ryan fought the controls, guiding them lower. With every passing second, his arms grew heavier, exhaustion clawing at him. But then, a break. The runway came into view, a stretch of safety in the chaos. With his last bit of strength, Ryan brought the plane down, the wheels screeching against the tarmac. A rough landing, but they were alive. As emergency crews rushed in, he barely heard the tower confirming their touchdown. Later, investigators would find the source, a leaking canister in the cargo hold, emitting fumes that had slowly spread through the plane. Who put it there? That answer would take time. But for now, Ryan had done his job. He had landed the plane, and everyone had survived.